right.
You ever put on a mask and all of a sudden your face is green and now you're running around wearing a Steve Harvey suit?
Congratulations, we made it back for another episode. This is Live from the Living Room, and I am Jay Rich. We got two comics on the show today. We have Alicia Bridges coming back one more time, and then we got Jason Zaremba. First things first, what is a uncomfortable truth you would like to share about yourself? Should I go first?
Yeah, you break the ice.
Okay.
Uncomfortable truth.
Let's see. Uncomfortable truth. I was roasted very, very. It got very dark very fast for, of all things, because I like subtitles on everything I like to watch. I didn't know that was a thing, a trigger point for some people, but I got shamed. I got subtitle shamed.
It's weird because I feel like in the past couple years, everyone that I've talked to needs subtitles now. I'm not against it, but it wasn't till I think probably a year ago or so. Now everyone I know watches shit with subtitles on.
Is it because of different languages or?
No, just they're just how can we put on the closed captioning?
They're probably getting old, and so they can't hear like
possibly.
They
used to. Yeah, your late 20s are a real.
Your hearing changes.
Yeah. What? Okay. To branch off that, what song lyric did you misremember?
Oh, I always get song lyrics wrong.
Yeah.
Dang, I just had a moment the other day, but now I can't think of the song. But I always say wrong words. I can't think right now.
I had last year, I mentioned, before we were recording, I guess that I had to go home for some time last year, and I was we were listening to some Elton John and Tiny Dancer. We were listening to that, and my mom, during the chorus, it got to that "Hold Me Closer, Tiny Dancer," and she was like, "What's the word there?" And I was like, "It's Hold Me Closer, Tiny Dancer." She was like, "Oh, I thought it was You Are Just a Tiny Dancer." And I'm like, "Mom, you've been listening to the song for 40 years."
But if you remember the wrong thing, you lock it in.
Yeah, exactly. It's so weird. You can go that long thinking the wrong thing.
Yeah, if nobody corrects it. Yeah. I mean, I think of the wrong lyrics all the time, but for the longest, I thought Gucci Mane's song "Is You Rollin'" was talking about going somewhere. I had no idea. I had no idea they were talking about drugs.
Really?
I swear to God.
That's
I
funny.
Really thought I was "Is you rolling?"
That's
yes,
funny.
I might go.
That's funny. That is funny. That's funny. That's funny.
So yeah.
All right.
That is very funny. Just hearing people talk about doing acid, I don't know why they keep falling over shit. They're just talking about tripping. What's with their balance?
No, for real. Oh, that means acid. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm learning something. It's crazy.
Did you get shamed at the table when or whatever room you were in?
When what?
When you learned what the topic?
Oh yeah, I always get shamed. I think I literally learned that in my mid-20s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I got so many different stories with that, but honestly, the reason why I started with closed caption is because my mom had the TV with all the good channels, and on her off day, I would like to watch certain things, but I had to be quiet because you wake up mom on her off day, you liable to get hit with something. Mm-hmm. So closed caption, volume very low, and it kind of became a muscle memory.
Oh,
yeah.
That's interesting. That's better than I'm just getting old and I can't hear the same anymore.
No, I got it honest from 12.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, now that I think about it, not in music, but in movies, I think I was recently watching one of the Harry Potter movies, and I had closed captioning on for some reason, but I was like, oh, okay, that's the word they said there.
Right,
because of the accent, I'm like, oh, I guess that's just a word they have.
Yeah,
you don't understand what they're saying.
What shows have you guys been watching lately?
True Story, Rhythm and Rhyme, that is a rap hip hop contest.
Is that the one with Jayden?
No, it's Chance the Rapper,
okay.
Cardi B.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Yeah, randomly because that came out 2 years ago.
You got me watching. Was it Explained?
Oh yeah,
yeah. You got me watching.
I love that show. That's
that documentary series.
Yeah, and they do 20
yeah.
minutes of a random topic.
Yeah,
yeah. I lost a couple hours on that.
Yeah,
and then it was, but I love psychology. So anything any type of deep dive that eats me right up. Thanks. What about you?
Shows Well, Seinfeld's on Netflix now.
Yes,
Yeah,
I've been watching that.
So I've been watching it nonstop.
Mm-hmm.
I work from home, so like I have the TV on like in the background. So it's been like Seinfeld. I just started rewatching. You ever watched The Americans?
No.
It's on Amazon Prime. It's about like Soviet spies like during the Reagan era that are like, you know, like they're just living as like a regular suburban family, but like they're actually like spies for like the USSR.
Oh,
It's
I
very
watched
good.
the first episode of that. I couldn't get into it,
it's a
but I
series.
probably just wasn't paying attention.
Is that like the series, what was it, Limited Time series, the one with Robert De Niro? Or I'm sorry, Al Pacino. About the KGB spies?
I've heard of
the sleeper agent, cell agents. I'm sorry. I think the Americans gave refuge to some German soldiers and scientists after World War II.
Operation Paperclip.
That's what it was. Was it similar to that?
No, well, that was Operation Paperclip was like us working with like Nazis. This was like these are like Soviet spies that aren't like they're working against the U.S. government.
Okay,
so they're like
against.
living here undercover, and like the twist on it is that their like neighbor that just moved into the neighborhood works in counterintelligence with the FBI.
Okay.
Not my kink, so I would probably never watch a full season. But
I'll take a look at it. that.
Yeah, it's good. It's really interesting to look at too, because like it takes place during the Reagan era, and like Oliver North, who was like the center of the Iran-Contra scandal, he actually I think he wrote a couple episodes.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, so it's interesting to like look at it through that perspective.
it's cool.
So, I think another callback to an old conversation you were having. Would you rather binge watch an episode or show or season or something, or do you guys miss the weekly appointment TV?
1000% binge watch for me.
Everything?
Everything.
Okay.
I do not want to have to wait. I get so anxious. Matter of fact, sometimes I will not watch a show like
So it's gonna build
Snowfall.
up. Yep.
I just will wait till it's over and I can see all the episodes.
But even with that, you have to avoid everything on the internet that involves it. So you gotta scroll right past it or something.
Luckily, I have weed memory, so I
That's good.
look at stuff and it floats away.
Yeah.
I no longer remember
The
it.
number of movies that I've watched for the first time multiple times.
Y'all, I
Like, I'm
swear to
like-
God, it's like 51st dates with movies. With
Yeah.
me. Like I
Seriously?
I never remember.
Yeah, this is
I
like
can-
this is a great ad for weed.
No, for real. Like
This is an ad for weed.
or
like, yeah.
childhood trauma. You know.
Do you want to be surprised when you find out Darth Vader is Luke's father?
Yeah.
You should roll up. Callback.
Is you rolling?
Is you
Bitch, I might
rolling?
Is
be.
you rolling?
Bitch, I might be.
I remember stuff in very high levels. I realized this about myself. So I can tell you a general premise of a movie, but I couldn't tell you specific parts. I don't remember that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. What about you? Weekly binge or weekly appointment TV or a binge?
It depends on the show, really, because like a lot of the Netflix shows and like those, which like I don't really watch that many shows. I'm more of a movie person.
Okay.
But like a lot of the Netflix shows are designed to be binge watched. So like I tried this like with like Orange is the New Black,
Yeah.
where like I don't think it was the last. It was like a couple seasons ago when like I decided it was like, all right, this season I'm just gonna watch like one a week, and after like the first 2 episodes, I just stopped watching because like you lose like I just like lost interest. I wasn't like watching it on the couch all at the same time.
Sounds
Okay.
like dating, you know.
Eventually, essentially, yeah.
Yeah, it
Follow me
always
for
reminds me of
relationship
that. When I'm going through my Netflix, I'm like, no, that's not good enough. Oh, let me watch the previews. No, let me skip to something else. I'm like,
Wow.
this is dating.
Wow. I like that. It's kind of genius.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What about people that do like maybe 1-2 episodes per release? Like I think Disney kind of did it with their new Hawkeye release. They did like gave 2 episodes the first week or something. What you think that's a better?
I would just rather watch all of them. Have
Give me
the
the whole
ability, give me the whole season. But you adjust. You know, we used to not have that luxury,
Right.
and we just had to deal with it weekly. I think as we grow as a society and stuff changes and gets better, we get more spoiled. We have no patience whatsoever.
Well, that's another thing too. Where like you have you like something like say it's dramatic, right? It takes maybe a year and a half, 2 years to get it done, and then we are done with it within a few weeks or a good day. And then you were begging for another season or another episode.
Facts.
That's go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say like a lot of like because like the Netflix series that are designed to be binge watched, because it isn't like week by week. It'll be like, all right, cool. New season of like Big Mouth is out, and then you watch it all in a day, and then it's totally like, all right, I just gotta wait a year and a half.
Right. Facts.
So it's kind of like, when do you want the patience? Like, do you want it like spread out, or do you want to be spending like the entire next year? Like, I gotta find out what happened.
And by that time, you probably forget maybe, or may not even necessarily be as invested anymore.
Well, do people? Well, I guess you kind of have to get that reminder, like, oh, they got a new season out. Is it? Yeah, is that happening to you guys a lot?
I mean, it depends on the show.
Okay.
Like Black Mirror is really popular. American Horror Story. No, they don't. American Horror Story.
You
like,
threatened me with a good time.
I always see those things pop up. Like somebody knows it's about to come out, and that's kind of a reminder. Oh my gosh, let me watch the show.
Okay.
But
it's kind of interesting because like if you're like on Facebook, like we were talking about, like how you got to avoid spoilers and shit.
Yeah.
But if you're in like a Facebook group for like a certain show or something,
yeah.
when like the new shit is coming out, is like everyone's posting about it.
Okay.
And so you're just kind of like, all right, it drops today. Like, I mean, I'm in like,
so
I'm in at
word
least
of mouth
8
is a
or
new
Seinfeld. I'm in like at least 8 or 7 like Seinfeld groups on Facebook, and when that was coming to Netflix, it was just like a different meme every day about it coming to Netflix. And
okay, next I want to shift into, there's a concept I kind of been floating around in my head, and I guess I've landed on calling it the comics curse. And what I mean by that is basically when comedians are doing something serious, or they try to take a shift from comedy, and they have this problem with people taking them serious.
Yeah.
Kevin's like he's taking hard shifts, and then I think True Story is probably like one of his more dramatic roles. But even in his promo runs, he's been talking about he's baby stepped everyone as far as seeing him in a different light versus being the over the top exuberant comedian, right? Different. I think every single comedian that's had like their run on top, they've all struggled with it. Jim Carrey, Eddie Murphy.
I was just talking to somebody about that fact.
What'd you guys get into?
Well, we were talking about Jim Carrey. We started off talking about Kevin Hart, then we were talking about Jim Carrey, and I said that it was very hard for me to take Jim Carrey serious. And we mentioned 23. It was another movie. I haven't seen it, but it was like this science fiction movie where he had this girlfriend.
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Is it good?
It's Charlie Kaufman who wrote it, and I don't know if he directed it, but he is my favorite writer. It's very good.
Okay, I want to watch it. Anyways, I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, a science fiction movie where this couple break up and they're trying to erase their memory of each other. And that's supposed to be serious. And then the one where he did the biopic as the comedian.
Andy Kaufman?
Yes, Man on the Moon. Yeah. Which I need to watch that documentary because it looks very good.
That documentary is so interesting.
Yeah. Like
he is so full of himself. It's hilarious.
Yeah. So it was very hard to see him going from like The Mask, Liar, to that kind of stuff. Like,
did you watch Truman Show?
Yeah.
How'd you feel about that?
Okay. Oh my gosh, we brought that up.
Okay.
So they said that was serious. That was a serious role for him, but I guess it was hard for me to comprehend it as a serious role because everything around him was so goofy to me.
Really?
Yeah. That was still, it was borderline, but to me it was still
it was like
goofy.
Bright enough, and I guess people were so animated, like over the top animated.
Exactly.
It gave you, but okay, well I would counter that by saying like Kevin Hart's role in the Wedding Ringer, and what's the Upside, where he was
the one with Bryan Cranston.
Yes. I think that's like a baby step in towards like, hey, I can be serious, but at the same time, I have my comedic elements about me as well.
Yeah.
Do you think you have to like slow walk somebody to another part of your personality?
One person you didn't mention, I don't think, was Jamie Foxx.
Yes.
You did?
But
and Eddie Murphy. They
Eddie
did, both of them transitioned beautifully. I don't know what it was about their transition. Maybe it's
Jamie
because
spoke on his.
Maybe because in our age group, maybe we came in towards the more serious part of their career.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But they were.
Well, what would you say Eddie made his transition from pure comedy?
Dr. Dolittle.
Yeah.
That is I cry, man, every time.
Every time.
That's a goofy movie to me, though.
It's fucking serious, bro. You hear an animal talk, you smoke the right amount of weed, and a bear telling you.
So
okay. So if I didn't have
it's a serious. That is a dark drama.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
But
With the right amount of weed. If I didn't do
That's-
weed, if I did weed, I could probably agree with that.
That's what they did, like a reimagining or whatever of Dr. Dolittle with Robert Downey Jr., but it was still like a family comedy.
Yeah.
They should have done one that was like a dark psychological thriller about this guy that can talk to animals.
It'd be like all the deers that get hit in the road.
That would actually be a good.
They call it roadkill.
Yeah.
Your face though. It's like,
Well, bro, have you ever seen The Voices?
No.
That's another movie that like it's kind of a dark comedy.
I want to see
It's
your
got
my
Ryan
list on
Reynolds.
Netflix for some reason.
Yeah, I do too. I'm very intrigued.
Like send me a screenshot of that. It's like this sounds
Yeah.
good. You got good taste.
Oh, I can recommend like 1,000. Because I do those polls on Instagram, and like people will like ask people like 2 or 3 people have like asked me like, what if you run out of movies? And it's like, bro, I've seen like thousands of movies. I can just keep going for like years.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it's a good thing. It means I haven't lived a day in my life. But I think that it's just kind of like, well, yeah, this is what I spent my life doing. So
That's dope, though.
So, going back to Jamie Foxx, he actually spoke on it. He said from his comedic transition to like more serious roles, he says he was a nobody in white Hollywood. And the black community knew him from like the Jamie Foxx show. Even though it did cross over, it wasn't as big as Fresh Prince and Martin. And
Which
then
was a very good show.
you're right. And actually, what made me think about the show, actually, that question was a piece I saw on the guy that played Braxton. Christopher Duncan, he was talking about how he wanted to do more serious stuff, but nobody would take him serious because they knew him. They get typecasted,
Right?
And that that led me to more of the comedic curse that we were talking about. With Jamie, he said what was the movie Booty Call with Vivica Fox? He said that kind of like put him in a box and typecasted in the black community, whereas he was a stranger in the white community. So he said that actually the lack of success in crossing over actually helped him in that regard.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
In regards to Kevin Hart, the person that I was talking to on yesterday said that in order for Kevin Hart to be taken serious fully, he's gonna do some type of biopic because all the comedians that have transitioned have a biopic.
He's got to gain some height, I think, to be taken seriously.
So Jamie Foxx with
So
Ray.
you give him a Bow Wow disease?
I wonder if him and Cat Williams are the same height, because I'm just like, those are two guys.
That's
that I know
actually a
are-
good question.
I've met Kevin Hart before. I used to work in radio, and he is like, I'm tall, but I literally could see the top of his head.
Well, he's like what, 5'4", 5'5", right?
Yeah, he's short.
And how tall is Cat?
I don't know. Probably
Okay, that's another thing that's gonna be in my
5'3",
Google.
5'4".
Yes.
Probably.
So with the biopic, right? Would you say loosely the true story is kind of a similar? No.
Who's the
I mean,
biopic for?
think about it. He's from the character is from Philly. They
Is
call
it
him the
supposed to be
kid.
him?
Well, I guess it's the believability. So I think the creative process. Are you guys aware of like the extortion scheme that happened with him?
I briefly
remember
seen
that?
somebody
With
say
Kevin Hart?
Yeah.
write a status about it because they were like, I
The
can't
sex
believe
tape. It's
he
from the
did.
sex tape.
Oh, okay.
Kevin Hart's got a sex tape?
Yeah. Well, the
He
sex tape.
got caught
yeah,
cheating
bro.
on
Well, it
his
got caught
wife,
cheat. Yeah.
Oh,
So
but
you
the
remember
tape
that.
is still out there.
I guess.
I don't
All
know.
right, I know what I'm Googling when I get home.
It was like you couldn't see him having sex, but it was like you seen him with the girl on the bed.
After sex.
Yeah,
yeah.
it was like the cleanup.
Man,
Yeah.
that's very disappointing.
When you say clean up, you mean go get the rag in the water?
Yeah, sure.
Dehydrated. Wipe stuff up, kid.
You just hear him off camera say sorry, and then you see him grab a rag, and that's the video. And you got to fill in the blanks. It's kind of like how you don't see the shark in Jaws until the end of the movie. You know, you got to kind of like
yeah,
your
we had to wait 90 minutes
imagination
for the first Batman.
Yeah.
So the extortion scheme was basically his friend had the tape and was trying to extort money from him.
Who needs enemies when you have friends like that?
Exactly.
How does your friend have a tape of?
Well, it was a guy who was in his crew.
So I guess he set him up with that woman and put the camera in the room.
Ooh, man, talk about spies. That is some fucking FBI, CIA kind of shit.
I mean, but that also could lead to like, I'm not necessarily a sympathizer of all celebrities, but I can see the paranoia, how it develops. Mm-hmm. When you talk about being on, there's one thing we're having being in front of the camera versus being behind the camera. You have all the lights, and you're talking about walking out of a dark room, and then you come outside and that right there, you can see how that could drive a person crazy. And the inability to have a conversation with a person as a human being because you always trying to figure out what they want from you. I could see where the paranoia can come from and how you can get trapped by your success. But going back to the True Story movie, or I guess limited series, it was like his character was from Philly. He was a hometown hero. He never used his name. He was always referred to as the kid. And then with the extortion scheme that took place in a movie or a series, whatever you call it, I could see the parallels in his life.
A biopic does not count if you're playing yourself.
Oh, you talking about just him doing like Jamie Foxx doing Ray,
right? Or like Will Smith doing Ali, or like I mean, it has to be somebody else. But Jim Carrey doing
Andy Kaufman,
like that.
That's an interesting take. Okay,
who would he play?
That's like Saturday Night Live had making working guys.
Who would Kevin Hart play?
I said James Baldwin.
Man, a James Baldwin movie would be killer.
Yeah,
that would be intense.
That would be amazing.
Even watching his old interviews is very intense.
Yeah,
and the struggles of how do you guys feel about the LGBTQ community struggle now? Do you think it's oversaturated, or I'm sorry, not oversaturated, but not like it's overblown, blown out of proportion? Or do you think they have a lot more? Well, obviously they have a lot more freedom. But who do you think had it harder? Some people, a gay person in the 60s versus a gay person now?
Gay person in the 60s.
Gay person in the 60s.
Sure.
Because because it was illegal to be gay.
Yeah, like against the law.
Yeah, so they would have a cop basically just like go to a bar and like hit on the guy. Gay patrol.
Hey, you look like, gay.
Yeah, they would have cops go to bars and just like find a guy that they think might be gay, like seduce him, be like, hey, you want to go back to my 1960s apartment or whatever? And then like once they get them to be like, yeah, let's go have gay sex, they'd be like, all right, you're under arrest.
That is a skit. That is funny
especially if you consider like he doesn't even say you're under arrest. He just pulls out the cuffs and
you're thinking you free.
Hell yeah, bro. And he's like, no, you're actually under arrest. I'm like, I get it.
Hands behind your back. Okay, daddy.
Right.
That's funny.
You have the right to remain silent, or
but
I won't. Me daddy.
Yeah, got the right to remain silent, but I won't. But
that's hilarious.
That'd be so funny, getting arrested, thinking it's some kind of role play. You're like in a jail cell. You're like, man, the production value that they hired these actors to act like drunks.
That's funny.
That's intense. But like going back to James Baldwin and he talking about his intensity. It's like he had duality. I wouldn't even say duality. It was just more of a struggle. Like, say you have something that you encounter as a white man, me as a black man, and then you as a black woman, and then you have the intersection of like different struggles, right? Mm-hmm. For him, and I think a lot of people like him, to have like to closet their actual lifestyle, and then the struggles of racism. On top of it, that was very, very intense, and it came across very strongly in all the interviews I watch of him. I forgot the question we were talking about.
Well, it's interesting too because like him being gay actually isolated him from like Martin Luther King kind of stopped associating with him when like it became like public knowledge that James Baldwin was gay. Yeah. So like you had like that angle of it too, and what it is interesting, I feel like. I mean, I do think it was like worse for like LGBT or whatever, but I think that there's different struggles now as opposed to back then. Mm-hmm. Like this definitely is like nowhere as like bad as like getting arrested.
Right.
But like,
with the nuance, I guess I'm trying to find the nuance of the struggles.
Yeah, it feels like there's got to be some kind of pressure to like, especially for like a lot of gay like comedians and gay actors. It seems like there's like, all right, you got to be like at the head of the parade and all this shit. Todd Glass, like I think is like the best example of this, where like he's gay, but he doesn't really like make it his thing. Like if you watch an hour of him, he's not going to talk about my husband and everything. Like he just talks like
a person.
Yeah. Well, like, and then he even like pointed that out where people talk about like, oh, men and women are different and all this stuff, and like relationships and everything. And he said like, for 20 years I basically ran an experiment where I talked about my same-sex couple saying it was a straight couple, and people all over the country were like, that's just like us, you know? So he kind of like tricked people into...
He played the long game, essentially.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, I like that. So another person like that, or another situation like that is like...
Kevin Hart.
No, Neil Patrick Harris.
Yeah.
So he was a ladies' man for How I Met Your Mother, and then the moment he came out gay, he basically has to play a person that's either gay or just something that's like some sort of pocket of personality that we can't look at him as the same man's man.
So they get typecast as well?
Yeah.
Well, that, I think it's one of the few good parts of the Harold and Kumar Christmas movie. I don't know if you guys saw that. Well, like in the first two like Harold and Kumar movies, like, you know, this was before he had that comeback. And so like his character, where he was playing Neil Patrick Harris, but he was like a womanizer and like all into like drugs and all this shit. And so then like in between the second movie and the Harold and Kumar Christmas movie, he came out of the closet.
Okay. And
so in like the third movie, they had it that like him being gay was just a front, and the guy that he says is his husband is actually his drug dealer. And he's
That's
like,
great.
It was
That's
very
really
funny the way
funny.
they did that. Yeah.
But why is it called coming out the closet? Like, why is that deemed the phrase?
I don't know, because like, if you ever, I mean, why do you say? Maybe it's another thing for Explain to have an episode on.
Yeah.
But well, like
the closet.
The closet. But like, you know, skeletons in the closet, or like bones in the backyard or something like that. I guess just to turn the phrase, like, I don't know, it's something that Wikipedia
like,
get from me.
I'm like,
Closets
wasn't a
are for
gay
cheap.
man hiding in the closet one day, and he's like, okay, y'all, I'm out.
I mean, if we're going to go to Trapped in the Closet with R. Kelly,
there's the Springsteen lyric, windows are for cheaters, chimneys for the poor, closets are for hangers, winners use the door. So
winners use the door?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to say that. What song was that?
Ooh, what were you going to say?
I was going to do another reference, but it wasn't as funny as my head. It was my head. Right. My filter, my joke filter kind of goes through the head first, and then it's like, I don't like it.
Oh yeah, I hate when that happens, especially when like you're on stage.
Yeah.
And you're like riffing, and you think of something funny, and you're like, this will be good, and then like right before it gets to your mouth, like
nah.
Your rational thought is like, don't say that in public.
Yep.
Back up.
Yep. Because I actually did some sort of a little bit about that, like my fear of clipboards, and it all stemmed from I used to service like a psych ward, and I would talk to different people that work the floor, and they gave me like a list of questions they would have to ask a person before they get admitted in certain situations. And honestly, if you catch the most logical person on a bad day, we're like 2 or 3 bad answers away from being put in that room.
Oh, I 1000% believe it.
Yeah,
for sure.
And it's just like so weird, but it's like, because we throw the label of crazy on different people. We like to label things.
Yeah.
And the thing about that is like, we are so apathetic as a people until it happens to us or someone we know.
I think we label it as crazy because there's not enough people being vulnerable enough to say me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, people aren't honest about their own shit.
And I actually was just having a conversation with one of my friends last night because she's crazy as hell. I mean, and I say that to her face all the time.
Yeah.
But some stuff that she was telling me in that moment, I was like, wow, I feel really honored that you trust me enough to share that, you crazy ass lady.
Yeah, no, that's a real thing. That's a real thing.
Don't tell anyone else.
Like,
that's a real thing.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Like, seriously, to share, you know, your
vulnerabilities
craziness and the things that your impulsivity and what you've done. And I don't have that type of energy. So it's not like you're sharing it because you'll think I agree or you think I do that kind of stuff. So it really was an honor for her to share that and feel comfortable, because what she was sharing, most people would not have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What
Absolutely.
was it? Share it for everyone.
No, because she would have a fit. Even if I don't say her name, she would have a fit.
Okay.
So.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
All right.
Comedian, I want to go back to something earlier we were talking about, where I guess like the disassociation, like Martin Luther King, from James Baldwin, right?
Yeah.
So as comedians, you guys have a numerous amount of contacts, and I'm guessing friends in the industry. Have you ever had a situation where your comedic friends are beefing and you kind of feel like a kid in a divorce?
Kind of.
What's your tactic way of handling it?
I'm always going to be the neutral party, and my advice is always going to be, why don't you talk to them about this?
Unless it's unless there's like an obvious wrong or right.
Right.
But like in most situations, it's like, what do you think about this? Is like, I plead the fifth. I'm not gonna get in the middle of this.
So, case in point, I guess Michael Che and Tim Dillon. Are you guys aware of that? So,
I believe they would have beef. That would make sense.
How so?
It was just like, I mean, Michael Che is like, he's like head writer for like SNL, and I feel like Tim Dillon like shits on SNL all the fucking time.
And that's what it started from.
Yeah.
And basically he called. Well, he's successful in what he does now, but he's basically like most sports analysts. They're failed athletes. I'm not saying he's. Well, I guess you could say
Michael Che or Tim Dillon.
Tim Dillon.
Okay, yeah.
So he was trying to do essentially what Michael Che is doing, and he didn't find his niche there. He found his success in another avenue, but he's critiquing what Michael Che does, and essentially that was the return fire. But it turned into a whole Twitter beef.
Yeah.
So people that have relationships with both parties, it's like, what side do you fall on?
First of all, I'm not going to get involved in no Twitter beef.
Yeah.
Like, period.
Yeah.
So that's not even personable to me. Like,
but it could hinder your jobs going forward,
and being
based on affiliation.
Being neutral on it also too, because there was this like recently, like with like the political like YouTube like commentary, there was this beef between like the Young Turks and this guy Jimmy Dore, and like it was like a beef where like it doesn't matter, but one guy that I like a lot, Kyle Kalinske, he like released a video stating his thoughts on it because like he knows both of them, so like people wanted to hear what he had to say. And he didn't play like I'm neutral, like out of any sort of like I just don't want to pick sides, but he just stated his thoughts where he's like, I see their point and I see their point, and now like both sides just hate him.
But that's American politics now,
Essentially,
because it's like we have to either go all the way 10 to this side, or all the way 10 on this side. Have you ever guys watch Vice or stuff like that?
But the channel?
Well, they do a lot of these shorts.
News, like website.
Well, they do these shorts where they do like these social experiments where basically like, you know how we have these personality tests, like when you go to like a job fair or like a personality test and stuff like that. So like 1 to 5, and you know how strongly you feel and stuff like that. So they start everyone out. They line a group of people up in the middle at 0, and then they'll present a question and have everyone walk their separate ways. That's essentially what our news is basically making us do, where you go all the way left, all the way right, and then people in the middle are basically get disregarded as like being too pacifist, or you don't belong to a tribe. Yeah. So you basically get excommunicated.
I feel like that all the time. Yeah. And I've definitely felt that way in the last year with COVID, for sure. How so? I've always leaned more left. And I don't know if it's age. Not that I'm all the way right by any means, but sometimes when I watch CNN, I'm just like, now come on. Yeah. Like the passive aggressiveness in their storytelling. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's just disgusting.
That's what he and I were talking about before you got here. We were talking about how the news used to be the news, where he just gave you the facts and he allowed the people to make their opinions on where they felt.
Extremely passive aggressive.
And then
I don't think it's that passive anymore.
Well, yeah, it's just straight up aggressive, and like it used to be, you know, Walter Cronkite and just like the news. What is the news? But then like what happened was Matt Taibbi wrote a good book about this called Hate Inc., where he talks about like part of the reason that the news was so unified back then was because we were in the Cold War, and so everything was against the Soviet Union. The
we had a
communists are the enemy,
common
like, it's
enemy.
then, and so then once the end of the Cold War hit, all of these news outlets were like, well, we need them to hate someone. Okay, you're a Democrat, you hate Republicans. You're a Republican, you hate Democrats.
Well, I think that it's human nature to be prejudiced and to pick sides. We do it in every area of life. We do it from
age, color,
race,
family,
to gender, to sports, to states, to schools. We just find some way how to separate ourselves. Now, not every way is detrimental to society, but I do feel like a lot of how we move is rooted in that.
Yeah. Well, and how much of that is manufactured, though?
Right.
Like, how much of that is, like... Because, like, how much of a conservative's hatred for Democrats comes from their actual views, and how much of it comes from they just watch Tucker Carlson? Because, like, you have... when you look at, like, independent polling on, like, on certain issues and everything... People tend to be agreeable on certain things, you know, like with all of these strikes that are going on, like across the country. Like I think it was like 70-something%, like Republicans and Democrats support striking workers, and it's because like it's when it comes to policy, a lot of people agree, but then it's the culture war where they're like, all right, talk about cancel culture, talk about Dr. Seuss, like. Man, you just opened a can of worms getting me to talk about politics. But like, the perfect example is the Dr. Seuss, because, like, at that time, it was I forgot the name of the bill, but the COVID relief bill was being passed in the Senate, and that was when Fox News was talking about Dr. Seuss, and what happened was 0 Republican senators voted for a bill that had between like 70 and 85% approval from the American public at large. And so to distract like people on the right from the fact that, hey, your leaders don't care about you at all, they were like, oh, the left is coming after, they're cutting the dick off Mr. Potato Head, what are we gonna do? Like, so that they change the conversation when it's not going the way they want to. And Democrats do that
essentially
too. They do, because I watch Fox just to see.
Yeah, me too.
Like what they're talking about, and if it's something in the news where it's not necessarily going the Republicans' way or it's tricky, they will not talk about it. Yeah. It's interesting how that works.
Well, I was just talking to someone else the other day, and we were talking about statistics. And, you know, there's a famous Jay-Z line he ran with off of a number of years. He was talking about men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie, right? But I find that to be that's not true anymore, because whatever argument that you're trying to present, you can go find a stat to support your argument.
I took a statistics class, and I learned a lot from that class. The fact that surveys can be manipulated in a biased way.
Yes.
So unless you know exactly their process and getting those answers, you don't know whether or not what they're presenting is biased or not. What I hate is when people get on Facebook and we're talking about a topic and they're like, well, I know 3 people who, bruh, it's 7 billion people in the world, and you basing your thoughts off the 3 knucklehead people that you have in your life? Yeah. Like, come on.
That goes back to the bubbles, and we were talking about algorithms earlier. It's like, if you like a certain amount of memes or from a whatever things, that's all you see. Like, I got to the point where I was like, damn, did I lose friends? Because I actually had to look up friends that I know or follow. Like, I never see them anymore. It's because they're the how infrequent they post, or if there are things that don't, I guess the way the algorithm shifts things based on opinion or like how liberal or how conservative a person is, you won't see it.
Yeah, so I've been watching a lot of social media documentaries, and social media is definitely manipulative. And so they set it up that way. They set it up for you to see certain things, so it triggers you to argue, to fuss, because they know that that's what's going to keep people engaged. So it's really interesting how that works. All of that is a science. All of it to keep you hooked.
And it's another case where it's manufactured from people at the top. Like they also convince us that this is the natural state of things. Like they convince us like, well, I guess, Republicans and Democrats, I guess they just hate each other. But it's like, no, if you actually talk about the issues, like, I know people that are Republicans, and when we talk about politics, we'll agree on, like, certain things. Even, like, conversations I have with people on the left that, like, I agree with on issues or something. It's like, we agree on more than we disagree. Mm-hmm. But the disagreement is where the profit is. Like,
right.
That's where the money is.
Facts, yeah.
And as long as they can, the fact that there was a study Princeton did, they looked at legislation over the past 30 years with, like, thousands of pieces that were, like, passed through Congress. And they found that public opinion had statistically zero influence on policy. And the only place where you saw any sort of nudge, like, if a piece of legislation was introduced in the House or the Senate, there was a 30% chance of it getting passed, whether it had 0% support or 100% support. So, like, where they found that there was actually a correlation was with the top 5%. And the reason that the top 5% is, like, a statistic that stands out is because only 5% of the country gives to political campaigns. And
so basically follow the money.
Yeah, and of those 5%, less than 1/2% give the maximum donation. And so the more, and like the more you unravel this, the campaign finance is where I think you really see the answers. Because like you look at, I don't know what the numbers were for 2020, but in 2018 it was like $2.8 billion was raised for the midterm elections, and like $1.5 billion of that came from super PACs, and 60% of super PAC money comes from 132 people. And so those are the people
that's crazy. And it was 2.8 billion raised?
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And that's just super PACs. That's not even counting the individual campaign contributions from these super rich people.
Can't relate.
Can't relate. Well, I want to talk about profits. So, shifting gears a little bit right there. There's a tech company called Promobot. Have you guys heard the story where they are offering $200,000 to a person, I think above 25, for their likeness and their voice for the robot?
Yeah, I did read that.
What's your number?
How do we apply?
Oh, so both of you want?
Yeah, you
said $25,000. I'll do it for $20 at this point.
I'll do it for a gift card to Arby's, bro. Yeah, bro. So, like, what's up?
I'll do it if you just pay my electricity bill this month. I'll do it for you. You can. Here's my soul. Like,
bro, Illuminati, he's ready.
It's cold, man. I think about that a lot because, like, there's a lot of I don't watch a lot of like mainstream like MSNBC or CNN, but there's like people that I see that like there's this guy Dave Rubin, the Rubin Report, and he's a guy that used to be on the left, but then the Koch brothers came at him and gave him all this money to start his own show, and ever since then he's been drifting to the right. And there's a lot of people talking about him like, this piece of shit, he's just shilling for corporations and all this. And I'm like, yeah, that's wrong, but I would do the exact same thing if I was in his shoes. I would sell out all of my beliefs.
Do you think he sold out, or do you think he actually evolved?
Well, I think that I think that he sold out. And then he's also a dumb person. Like, if you watch him in any interview where it's not softball, you see him completely break down. And I think that because he started talking to people on the right a lot more, that was when he started.
With the room, the last person he talks to is the person he agrees with.
Basically, yeah. It was actually like one moment was on Rogan. Yeah, Rogan used to be friends with him when he thought that Rubin was being like honest in his opinions, but then once Rogan saw that he was actually like just a grifter, he like stopped associating with him. He like just like cut him off, and like Dave Rubin would be like, "Hey, I got to be on the pod. Can I be on the pod?" And Rogan would just ignore him because he's like, "You're not an honest actor. I'm not gonna elevate your voice at all."
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Do you think how much power is too much power? Like, say what you just said about Joe Rogan, in the sense of like, I'm not going to elevate your voice, because he understands how much of a platform, how much his platform elevates a person. How much power is too much power?
In the hands of one individual?
Yes.
I don't know. I think that Well, you have to look at, because like we have this idea of like absolute, like power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. But then like that's sort of the story that we're told in like, you know, the US like now. And I definitely don't agree with like dictators or emperors and shit like that. But it's funny when you look at from like a historical standpoint in like ancient Rome, there were these like people that were known as the good emperors because like they had all the power, but
they didn't abuse
things were thriving. Yeah, like things were going well. They, you know, some of them weren't great in their personal lives, but they.
I mean, human beings are human beings.
Yeah.
But even with that question that I presented, like I've been looking at all these different systems, and I think you know how you fall into a YouTube wormhole or whatever, and you basically like how I end up in this alley of the internet. But here I am. I was going from critical race theory, and then I landed into all these different systems of socialism, Marxism, capitalism, stuff like that. And even going to like pure one singular dictator, all these systems can work in some form of fashion, but giving the people that are in control have the best intentions. And now that's where it gets a little shaky when it comes to what group wants to benefit what, because like the community can thrive right here with this system, but people are going to suffer in some form of fashion. So it's basically pick your struggle with every system.
And and it's cool because a lot of systems, they'll be basically, like a lot of them are basically an experiment to how much can we change people to make this thing worse. Like a lot of people talk about like the Spartans was basically, let's have a society where your primary being is to be a warrior. You know, you look at like Imperial Japan where it was like, let's make people just love suicide. Like how can you twist the actual people into conforming to this like model that you want to have for society? It's like when you go into those different schools of thought, it's very interesting when you look at the actual ideology versus how they are in practice.
All right, so quick recap. Both you guys would like to be the face of the of the end of the world with Terminator bots?
Sure.
I don't understand why anyone would want to look at my face for more than, I don't know, 30 seconds at a time. But yeah, go ahead. If you want me to be HAL 3000, I'm fine with that.
Definitely.
I could be the fucking chick in Blade Runner 2049. Have a fucking giant pink hologram of me with my dick out, and I'll like give me $25. Honestly, I'd do that for free. If you could like, if a company were to be like, hey, we're gonna like just like get a video of you naked, it's gonna be a hologram on top of like the Empire State Building, I'd be like, I'll pay you for that opportunity, man. That'd be very funny.
I'd do that too.
Yeah.
And you said Andy Kaufman was full of himself. That's funny. So
I would honestly like that would be. I mean, like day 3, it might be kind of like, all right, now I'm the thrill of it is gone. Now everyone's looking at my dick.
Right.
Yeah.
But day 1, I'd have like a parade. I'd just be like, hey, look at this shit. This is me.
Would you be
actual size?
This is so TMI. You're naked, right?
Yeah.
Are you okay with you being on flaccid? Like,
I was about to say the same thing. You want soft in between
right,
a full.
like,
I would have it flaccid, but I would have a banner out front that says "grower, not a shower."
Okay.
So that I can leave it to the imagination for people. You know? And that's because that's already big enough too. People are gonna like journalists are gonna track down women that I've been with and like, you know, be like, oh, is this, you know what? And there's gonna be contradicting stories. That would be, you know what? I think we got a screenplay going.
Yeah, I was just thinking
that's
that.
Gonna be
Shaved
the next
or
Jim Carrey movie.
Shaved or unshaved?
You
gonna get a nice little trim up there, or you gonna leave it bushy?
I'm gonna, you know what? Let's go with trim. I think that I think I can't. Either extreme is too much for me. You know, politically I'm on the left, but pubically I'm a moderate.
Pubically, moderate.
Pubically, publicly and pubically.
That's
well, me, I'll keep a mustache, no beard. That's my motto.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Do any men have landing strips? Have you ever encountered a man with them?
I
Because I
You-
feel
What
like
I just
women
described was a
I
landing
think
strip.
women get more creative with that than men.
No, women are definitely more creative.
Yeah.
Well,
But I think they have to.
Well, I feel like,
think
yeah,
they
yeah,
have to
there's
be.
not as
we
much
have
to look at.
Right.
It's kind of like, ta-da! Like, all right.
No, well, if she's getting to the hair and you want to be considerate, or if you want to get all the pleasure of her getting to the hair, you'll knock some of the hair down.
Yeah. I mean, I don't give a shit if they're like, let's fucking play. But what is funny? Wow,
No,
this is really
I
too
can
much.
go. I
But
can
like,
go a
what's
little bit more
funny
crazy
is
than
when
shade.
like it's too much and like you just
Yeah, when you
can't
get up-
really get the job done now.
When you start spitting out the hair, it's like
No,
that's a
it's
little
not
too
even the
much.
spitting out of the hair. It's like it's too much. I can't even get to the areas I'm trying to get to because like it's like you know.
Follow the heat.
I feel like I gotta get like a machete, like I'm in the jungle and there's vines everywhere, like I'm in the new Jumanji movie.
Well, if the first time, I guess you would say that it's walking through the maze. Once you've been there, you feel the heat and you like use muscle memory.
I find it annoying.
Like a metal detector at the beach, like
I find it annoying that that's the expectation now.
What's that? Being fully shaved?
Yes. God, it's so annoying.
I don't. Here's
How
the thing.
like bald or shaved? Yeah.
I mean, it depends on the man. Because some men are like, I don't want any hair at all. Like,
I've
it's
never-
gotta be-
I've
Those
never-
fucking get with an adult if that's.
I mean,
Yeah, I was about to say I've
some
never
dudes are
said
too
that.
picky, and it honestly bothers me that like that's seen
That's
as
your
like
no?
yeah, like women will like assume like a guy wants a certain thing, and I'm like, no, not at all. Who cares?
I'm
Why?
asking
Why?
because if I ain't got to do all that work,
yeah, exactly.
Well, for me, I guess we're gonna go there.
I know, right?
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
fucking go there, man.
So for me, it's
We've
like
already
how-
talked
You
about
started it.
holographic dicks.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Welcome to the inside of my mind, man. It gets weird.
2 a.m.
Cirque du
thoughts.
Soleil freaking.
So for me, it's just basically if I'm gonna give you head, how enjoyable, well, how engaged do you want me to be? It's like how big you leave your bush.
Okay.
That's basically it.
I mean, listen.
Like you have a scale, like
Yeah,
you're
it's like walking through grass.
Like one
If
of
you don't
those,
cut the grass,
what are those like color things that they have at like Home Depot for paint? You're kind of
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
all right, she's into this. It's like at this level.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I work out, so I have to shave.
Okay.
But I just hate that it's an expectation on sometimes when you may not have
You ain't had time. You
gotten
had
a
about 2
chance.
weeks.
It's
Yeah.
like you. But I will say, not shaving keeps me from having sex. That is like my chastity belt because I'm
Word?
not gonna give it up if it has hair on it.
All right. Is that for new dudes or like a guy that you already had?
That's like new dudes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
For sure. Definitely new dudes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I
And
was
even
about to say.
if they're like, it's cool, in the back of my mind, I'm like, no, it's not.
You
So-
still want to be your best self.
Right. And I
Yeah.
don't feel like that's
All
me
right.
and my best self in those moments.
How many times have you given it up when your bra and panty didn't match?
This is a question for me.
Both.
Okay.
I definitely.
I guess what chest hair for men, right?
First of all,
I actually, well, this is a more interesting conversation. But what you guys are talking about is a more interesting conversation. But when I was in quarantine before I lost my mind, I guess this was probably a sign that I was starting to lose my mind. I just shaved my entire body, and like I will say,
you trying to
like,
get more aerodynamic? Or
well, no, like I was just like out of nowhere. I was like, should I just like I like texted a friend, should I just shave my entire body? And she was like, go for it. And I was like, all right. And then I did it. And by the way, I will
why
say,
would she have said no though? Like, where?
I don't know.
I don't think that's a good idea. Don't you want
was
to
she
be
just
manly?
ready for pictures?
well, like I will say, shaving your legs is a lot harder than I thought it would be. Like having
was
to
hard?
get
Well,
behind
I'm
the
learning that
knee and like down here. I thought it was just
see.
like,
Yeah.
I had to like.
Have
Well,
you
you're
ever
a
shaved
lot
your
more
girlfriend?
hairier.
I'm a very
have
hairy
you
man.
shaved a girlfriend or a woman before?
Shaved another person? No.
You should try that.
Yeah.
It sounds. It does. Sound
It's a
kinky.
level of trust.
It is a
yeah.
level of trust,
Oh,
but,
yeah.
but like
It's real
man
sensual.
to man, I would say you would naturally appreciate the effort that women do more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Going back to bra and panties, I need that. I need that answer.
Yeah. Let's talk about why we're here today.
Right.
Right. Most of the time, I know that I'm gonna give it up, so I will wear matching bra and panties. It's seriously, and then
So how many times have you not? You're like, damn, how do you even talk me into this?
honestly, at that point, that's the least of my worries. I'm giving them my vagina, and I'm worried about whether or not my bra and panties are matching. Like, I really feel like we have a weird Like, okay,
Ooh,
for
okay.
example,
Let's go.
for
Let's go.
example,
I'm
man could probably get coochie from me before he would get my Netflix password, and that, my friends, is screwed up.
I love how it's like we're about to possibly accidentally create a person.
Right, but you can't have my
That's
Netflix.
real. No, that's real. That's real. Okay,
No,
what about you guys? What about you guys? Like, if it's not a person that you necessarily care about, or it's not a certain level of intimacy, right? You'll have sex, but you won't kiss.
I don't believe
I've
in
never
that.
had that.
Yeah.
No.
Really?
Get that out of here.
I don't
I've
know,
never
but
had
that's the
that.
thing with some people.
Yeah, I know it's the thing.
I know. I think I saw something. There's a porn star that like says like she doesn't kiss in her scenes like, because she
she's at
saves
work.
that for her husband. Yeah, exactly.
She's at work.
That's inappropriate.
That's like I guess like the Brazilian women, they'll do all anal stuff because they're saving their vaginas for their husbands.
That's not just a Brazilian thing.
That's a Christian thing.
Yeah, actually.
Okay.
But I used to teach sexual health, and that was definitely a misconception among the teenagers.
I knew girls that would give head,
I'll
but
give
they wouldn't
head,
have sex.
I'll do anal, but I won't give up vagina because
I'm gonna
that's
keep my V
reserved
card.
for
I do
I like
not
marriage.
miss that age when you have no idea what's going. All you know is you want to be there,
Yeah.
but you have no idea what it is, how it works. You're like, do it like you. That's like that shit. That was scary. Like sex was scary for a while, where you're just
Scary?
like, I don't. Well, like.
What? Yeah, no, I'm thinking now. I'm doing
Well,
I'm doing
back to
self
who-
inventory.
Yeah, think back to who you were when you were like. Think about your first time, and you were like excited, but you were also kind of like, all right, how do I like?
I
What,
was
like-
uncertain.
Did y'all have
Like-
a lot? Did y'all watch a lot of porn?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Even then?
Yeah.
How
Then
did you-
yeah,
how did you
I
get
watched
to it?
I watched more porn then than I do now.
How did you access it?
I view porn as like
Parents
a
and I
friend
had an
from high
older
school.
brother.
Okay.
Well, I'm a millennial. Like I'm 27, so I just had the internet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm 34, so it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Not that we didn't have access to it, but it wasn't. We didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a weird generation because I've experienced not having a cell phone versus the changes that have happened in the last 30 years or even 15 years, to be
Yeah.
honest. But porn wasn't as accessible. So I guess my point in asking that question is, my first time, I didn't really have a lot of examples of what should happen.
Well, that's a bad example within itself. And now I think porn, there's been a lot of studies on that too, where people basically generate their sexual ideas and what's
Right, from porn.
Which is bad, especially
Performing,
if you look
they're performing versus the actual intimacy of what the moment's supposed to be.
So maybe it was a good thing I hadn't seen it.
Possibly.
Yeah,
Possibly.
yeah.
It depends. Well, I guess it depends on your partner as well, because our even okay. So I put it like this. So, me being in a relationship for 6 years and then I became single down here. I thought I was a freak until I started dating in this. I won't even just call it Atlanta, but I just say just being single and dating and understand what other people are doing. And then like when you start interacting with people that have multiple sexual partners and they have all these different energies and different things that
And
they
experiences.
do. Right. I thought I was a freak. It was like, no, I just
You
have
have
a high
a regular
sex-
ass sex
I just I
compared
have
to other people.
and see, yeah, I thought I was a freak, but it's just I have a high sex drive, whereas other people it's like I feel like some people they kind of do what people call the kinks, and then they like ramp things up for the adrenaline rush because they've been desensitized by something because they've had too much of one thing.
I thought
I
it
don't
was.
know if it's decent. I don't know if you
Well,
get
look,
desensitized because I read something the other day that said if you have a kink, most likely one of your parents or both had that same exact kink.
You think
Like
so?
it said it was a study. Like genetically, they said you have the same kink as your parent.
I could probably have talked to my dad about that.
Thinking
but not my
about
mom.
taking inventory of my own shit. Good for them. Good for them. That's you know
Right?
what? Good for you guys.
And I did have a thought like, does my mom like to be controlled? That's
It's
weird.
possible, but also the study I saw was we kind of develop our love languages and our love styles based on what we did have or we didn't have as children.
Well, but if just to backtrack for that, like think about the shit that you've been with, like some of the shit people are into.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, their parents were probably into that. Like I thought, like you say, like I thought I was a freak till I got to college and a chick told me she wanted me to pretend that she was a dead body. And then I was like, all right, I'm out. I'll see you guys later. Like, nope.
I mean, that's a starfish though. It's like beyond that.
Huh?
No,
like beyond the starfish?
No, I think she
Starfish.
meant like.
No, she
I'm
meant
dead,
like she
I'm not
wanted to.
moving.
She said she wanted to pretend to be a corpse, and I was like,
Yeah,
no,
that's some freaky
not even.
shit.
Yeah,
Okay,
I was like, not
so
like.
I have follow-up questions.
I'm sure you did.
I
did as well.
She was gonna be quiet and just basically in non-responsive. Try to be non-responsive.
Well, basically, what she. Well, now that I think about it, she may have just been lazy.
That's what I'm saying.
And it was like,
starfish.
okay, you know what my kink is? You do everything.
But
That's a joke.
I guess you're gonna have to
It
cut
is.
this out of the podcast.
I like how you're always writing.
No, always.
Yeah.
That's a premise.
Right.
It's funny, the life of a comedian, like
You're always writing.
people. Yeah, like I'm always like I'll have any thought, and I'm like, is that a thing?
Yeah.
No. And then you move on with your day, but
Yeah.
it's just constantly.
I always put the notes in my phone. I don't care how mundane it is. I'm like,
Because
if
you never know when it comes
You
back.
never know, bruh. For real. And that in those moments, because it's hard for me to come up with jokes that are like everyday relatable stuff because my mind is very deep. So I'm always coming up with these deep concepts. So in those moments, I'm coming up with relatable stuff because it just so happened to be regular shit that I'm talking about.
Right.
So it helps me in that department. Even if I don't use it,
Yeah.
it might give me a thought.
Also, just like writing down your thoughts makes it easier to process them because
For sure.
I mean, your thoughts never stop. Like you're always like constantly. So it's just a mess. You're basically juggling like 1,000 different thoughts at once. So like that's why they like a lot of like therapists and shit like will recommend like journaling because it's like, all right, get it to where it's
Organizing
in.
it,
Like like get it to where it's actually out. Like I was venting to a friend today about something that like I hadn't really talked to anyone about, but like that was bothering me. And then like once I like actually like told it to them, I was like, oh, I'm just crazy. This is nothing. Like I was like in my head, like I've been like walking around being like, this is like bothering me. Like this is bothering the fuck out of me because of this, that, and the other thing. And then like when I actually like wrote it out to say to a friend, I was like, oh, this is nothing. Like I was like, oh, this is
helped
nothing.
me to realize my repeated cycles
Yes.
because the stories were exactly the same but just different names. It was like a mad lib
dating?
of heartbreak. So I was
Well,
like, I have a problem.
Yeah. So what did you identify? Because I'm guessing that people didn't look the same, but they have similar traits and personalities.
It was the same traits, same personalities, and then the same scenario. So it was like it would always end the same way. And had I not journaled, and then one day, this is what really kind of changed my life in a sense. One day I was just reading back through my journal, and I'm like,
I have a
this
pattern.
is disgusting.
Yeah.
And at that time, I didn't know anything about self-compassion and giving myself grace. So I just really was disgusted with myself that I continuously allowed myself to grow through this. But it was life-changing because then I got to see, all right, I have a problem, and here are the themes. If I had not journaled, I would have never seen that. So I'm very grateful for that moment.
So
this was you looking at your past self, or this was as you were writing it, you were realizing?
So it was a moment where I'm having a traumatic issue in a romantic situation.
Yeah.
And I'm reflecting back on this other time that I was hurt. And then I'm like, well, wait a second. Let me go back to this and go back to that. And it just kind of was like, started with my present self. Then I started looking at my past self. Yeah.
So for me, I think a lot of people will either discover that with either a therapist or with a person that really holds them accountable, like a friend that you kind of like your friend earlier you did reference to, like, who could trust you with their most vulnerable thoughts without the fear of judgment.
Right.
But at the same time, how many of us have those type of people in our life that can actually throw it out on the table and we don't necessarily get defensive? And most people get defensive and attack the person that's telling us about ourselves.
And I will say that my friends are good. If anything, I'm the defensive motherfucker.
That's your cancer side.
No, for real. Because I was about to say none of my friends do that because
Yeah.
I'm the defensive one. But we trust each other. And even last night when she was telling me, I was like, I understand the lack of impulse control, how you can get emotional. I was like, but sis, you're making the situation worse.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to therapy, great, but you got to do the works. And it was another one of our friends there too. So it was like, be comfortable to share, but know that we're going to be honest with you. We're not going to say that that's appropriate, but we're going to do it with love.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. And people have to learn empathy, vulnerability, and all of that in order to communicate with people in a way where they don't get defensive.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard because a lot of times I think a lot of situations like that come to the table and people will weaponize it against you. And that's where, I don't know, I guess I'm the biggest advocate of therapy because you don't have a person that's going to necessarily use it against you to keep you, to maintain their stake in your life. Mm-hmm. Whereas our friends or maybe our lovers, they don't want to lose us, or they don't want to lose a certain level of access to us. So they only feel comfortable being so honest in certain regards.
Kevin Hart's learning that firsthand right now with that extortion.
Facts.
Yeah.
I experienced that in romantic situations for sure. But as of late, as I grow and become better, I always try to create a safe space.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, no lie, I was talking to a gentleman and he expressed that he was watching trans porn.
Kevin Hart.
And in that moment, my brain was like, ah! But I was like, oh, let me ask more questions because it could maybe it was the trans person's dick out, because if they were just giving head and they look like a woman, maybe we can work with that. So let me
hold on 1 second. Have you ever watched a porn and you was like looking at a person like a blowjob video, right? And you're like, that look like a man. Have you ever seen that?
Where I'm watching it and I'm like, that looks like a man?
Yeah.
Not that I can think of.
I've seen it. I've seen it, and it's like,
I asked some of my male friends.
Okay.
And one of them was like, hell no, but that does not mean he's gay. That is what he told me. Another one said that sometimes you'll come across it. It's not on purpose. And then you'll realize, something's not all the way correct about this.
That's where I was going.
There's something about that woman's dick that's really... there's something going on with this woman's dick. No,
the way it happened is because they'll put trans porn on straight pages,
right?
And you don't notice it because, like, if I don't know how to speak for women, but I know speak for men. We're like, the hornier we get, the dumber we get. Mm-hmm. And
yeah.
So you could definitely be like, wait a minute, I don't see any breasts. No,
right. Yeah. So in that moment, instead of spazzing out, my thought process was, in order to get honesty from somebody, you have to create a safe space. Okay. And me creating that safe space is not overreacting. Yeah. So let me be open and ask questions. And then I also had to think
What's your
about.
Follow-up question?
I asked him, what was the scene? And the scene was oral sex.
Okay.
So it was the trans woman giving head to the guy.
Did he search it?
Now, I don't know if he searched it. Okay. I didn't ask that. But I watched
important.
I watched lesbian porn though. So then I had to ask and I'm
There's
not
a double
gay.
standard. There's a double
I've
standard
never been with a woman.
Though.
I'm not attracted to women. There is a certain element of lesbian porn that interests me, and I'm not gay. So it is a double standard. It gets tricky.
Yeah. Could you date a man that used to be gay?
No.
Okay. Could you date a woman that used to be gay?
I thought you were going to ask me if I could date a man that used to be gay. I was like, used to be. Maybe. If he used to be, maybe. If he found the Lord, maybe. Yeah.
I'm not comfortable with that.
Okay.
I mean, I don't really care. I think really just do what I like. And even like if like, they're into like trans shit, I'm like, all right, cool. Like, I don't care what other people are into. Just, do what you want. Use as many holes as you want. I don't care.
I also said that I would never date a short man, so
that's true.
As you age, you're like, he got 4 teeth, I'll take him.
You said,
this dude is
so when did you change?
6'7". He's homeless,
right? But
no, it's funny you say that because there's a crazy stat that like there aren't a lot of tall homeless men.
That's interesting.
Think about it. Like when you watch and you see the people asking, "Hey, you can get some change." They're always
some change up there.
they're never tall. I've probably seen my one too.
Homeless people are also very unattractive a lot of times, and so I do wonder.
Let's kick them while we're down. Why don't we? Yeah, homeless people, their breath. What else do we not like about them?
Yeah.
Let's see.
I'm talking about just like
Their grammar's not great.
Yeah.
Show me a homeless person that knows how to use a semicolon. Okay, let's talk about the real issues.
Right.
I do wonder if
women. I'll go ahead.
I do wonder because you have a certain unearned privilege when you're tall, when you're attractive, short hair versus long hair, big versus skinny. Mm-hmm. And so I do wonder if though sometimes homeless people have got the brunt of not having privilege in all ways, whether it's economically, financially, physically, looks, intelligence, if that makes you more likely to be in those type of situations. I do wonder that. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong.
And it goes back to mental illness as well, because a lot of them are like, a good amount of them are veterans that have like PTSD.
Because mental stability is an unearned privilege, I feel like, in itself.
But it's very fickle.
It is fickle.
Because one traumatic issue could push you right on the other side of like, now I have a problem.
And most of that stuff that pushes you, now I have a problem, is probably associated with some shit that you didn't have a privilege for. Which is what impacted your mental health in the first place.
Yeah, and they actually, there's this historian who I love named Rutger Bregman, and he had this TED Talk he did where he said, poverty isn't a lack of character, it's a lack of cash. And he brings up this study that was done where they took farmers at the beginning of the harvest and at the end of the harvest, and they gave them IQ tests. And they found that, I might be mixing it up a little bit, but like at the beginning of the harvest, when they didn't really have like much, like they didn't really have anything on hand, like they found that the IQ, when they had more like supply, was like much higher.
Really?
And like, yeah, like when your means are essentially and we found that with the COVID relief checks that came out last year was like,
for sure,
people had a moment to breathe and they weren't like worrying about like the amount of people that have some form of mental illness that like would the mental illness problem in this country would be solved in a lot of ways if there was more stuff like that. And you can see that especially in the rise in suicides in recent years. A lot of people will attribute that to like teenagers and like emo kids and killing themselves. But where the sharpest rise was in middle-aged men who were having their jobs either shift overseas or automated.
The feeling of
and they didn't have really any financial support. Maybe some of them had disability, but they also, working in manufacturing all your life, you're going to have shoulder problems and all this shit. Your doctor's going to prescribe you opioids.
Which is why I said it's a privilege, because I have a full-time job. I can afford therapy. I go to therapy, once a month. It's a lot of people that can't afford that.
Absolutely.
If they're drug addicts, they can't afford to stop working or even to go off to a facility to get back straight. Like, mental health really is a privilege. And it's crazy to say because it should be a right for everybody. But if you got some issues in adulthood, it's hard to get help if you don't have the means. Even, like, I have psoriasis, and so I'm going through this whole rigmarole, which I do every 3 months, of getting my medicine. I have to call the insurance and call the pharmacy and call my doctor. And I was so angry on Monday, and I asked the representative, what do people do when they can't mentally do this? This is a lot just for somebody who is right now sane. If I'm depressed, if I'm feeling inadequate, how am I supposed to call therapists and get help? And therapists don't call you back and you already feel like you're ready to give up.
My first bout with a therapist, it was even with happens with homelessness out in Cali. I have a friend out there, and she says people either remain in their despair or they learn to manipulate the system. So, case in point with therapists. When I needed a therapist, I was going through a real tough time, and it kind of like reoccurs around this time for Thanksgiving and New Year's. I talked to the therapist, and she said she was all booked up. And then she said, well, legally I have to ask you, are you thinking about hurting yourself or someone else? And I actually took a pause, like, I should lie just so I can get what I need right now. But that's what most people end up doing. I said no.
And the other issue is, if you do say yes, they admit you.
Right.
Now, and it might not, it could even be, and I've seen that first, and I haven't been admitted, but I've seen it firsthand where somebody that's close to me said, you know, sometimes I don't feel like being here. And they admitted them.
Yeah. Well, it depends on where they are, because people that will try to get off the street will say the same thing when they're manipulating the system. But now with what my friend was saying out there, they would say something like that, and then I guess people, they got hip to the game. So what they'll say is, okay, if you don't have a plan, you're not really thinking about it. You're just trying to get off the street for the day.
They do say that. Okay, so, see, I'm thinking of it from regards of a person not homeless, but a person who is homeless to say something like that. That's interesting to me because it's for a totally different purpose.
Yeah.
Well, you have like similar situations where it's like a homeless person will just commit some form of like petty
crime to get off the street.
Yeah, just to have like a place in, you know,
couple good meals. I know people that go to jail to get dental work. It's been
I got a friend who went to jail just for the sex.
Yeah.
He wasn't.
That's a guy that's thinking.
Yeah.
He doesn't need Tinder, Grindr, or whatever other things. He doesn't need the swipe.
Yeah. He's just like, fuck all
whatever's
this.
in a box. I mean,
I don't need a wife when I can become a wife. You know,
right.
like let's make that happen.
Absolutely.
That's funny.
Absolutely.
So my dad had been missing for 10 years, and early October, late September, his sister calls me and say, "Hey, we found your dad." So he had been living as homeless, and when they found him, he was in a hospice with 2 months to live, which that's a whole nother story in itself. And
we've been talking about the wrong shit. This is interesting.
He ended up passing away. But it was interesting to me because his friends that he lived with on the street did like a memorial for him. And I had not seen him I had not spoken to him in almost 10 years. And the way they spoke about him was so amazing to me because their values as homeless people is totally different. Like, we value materialistic things and the type of car somebody drives or how much money they make or their success. But when they were talking about my dad, he was creative. He would give his food as long as he had a can of food, or he would stand up for women, or, you know, he was, I don't know. It was just all of those. It just blew my mind that, because when I talked to my therapist about it, that first week when I found out he had been living homeless, I was so emotional because I was like, it had to be so lonely out there on the street.
But he had more of a community than most people that have that privilege. He had
love, bruh.
Yeah.
That was mind-blowing to me.
That's true. I haven't thought of that before.
And in the deepest, most genuine way, because they had nothing to offer each other but
community,
character, and community. And it
doesn't
was mind-blowing.
that gives you hope for humanity too, doesn't it?
It does.
Because we have this like veneer theory where it's like, oh, if we lose everything, like everyone, like Lord of the Flies, there's this idea that it, you know, like, oh, if we were to take away rule, you know, you take people and you put them on an island without any sort of like rules or anything, they're just gonna, you know, it's gonna be chaos. Well, actually, back to that guy Rutger Bregman I mentioned earlier. He wrote a book called Humankind: A Hopeful History, which I recommend anyone who has any sort of like I think anyone that has like a negative view of human nature, which I think a lot of us do because of how you know. Society, like, you know, society, like, kind of makes us like look for the worst in each other, and the whole book is basically deconstructing that. And he brings up Lord of the Flies and a story that actually is now, since he wrote the book, this story is going to be made into a movie, where it was a group of, I think, like 3 or 4 boys who were like shipwrecked on an island. And it didn't become Lord of the Flies chaos. They basically lived in relative harmony. Like, they like survived for like, I think it was like a year or so out there. And like, you know, I mean, there were arguments and shit, but like overall they cooperated and worked together. Yeah. And that's like the kind of thing that, like, yeah, they're not gonna teach you, you know, to trust each other. They're gonna they want us to be divided.
I think separate groups they'll develop different cultures, and it may be a factor of where we came from and how we were raised within our families and stuff like that. So somebody might say, "Hey, I might have to assert myself as a leader," and then it's become a sense of control. And then other things were like, "I can't trust anybody. All you guys are basically my enemies because I need to hoard everything for myself." And then you end up by yourself, isolated, or like most people in privilege. Whereas if you have nothing and you have socks, you have a shirt, and I have pants, where it's like, okay, we put all these things together. One person can go into the store and get everything for everybody.
There was a homeless girl who had a car, and she went around the neighborhood. She came back 3 times, and she could fit 4 people at a time in her car, going to get people to come to the memorial at this picnic table.
That's crazy.
Crazy. I never felt more loved by God than in that moment.
Wow.
It was mind blowing. For real.
Do you have any idea what drove him to living on the street?
Yeah, so and y'all know I have a crude sense of humor, so I do have some jokes about this, but I'm not ready to tell them yet.
Okay.
But he was an Army vet. So he was a veteran. He had drug abuse issues. Okay. I'm pretty sure he had some mental health issues. I just know what I go through with my anxiety. I haven't chose crack yet, but I know what I go through. So I can only imagine, the mental.
Well, just even with you saying he's a former veteran and then he got on drugs. I mean, a lot of people end up on drugs because they don't have another coping mechanism and because they're trying to distance themselves.
Exactly.
And then another problem develops and now you become engulfed by the addiction and then the problem you were trying to run from.
And the biggest issue was I didn't want to be a burden. So me and him got a chance to talk on his deathbed, basically.
That sucks.
And so, yeah. The thing that he said was I didn't come around because I did not want to be a burden and I just wanted to have some good news. That was his thing. Yeah. But it gave me peace to know that despite, him not being a great father because of his own issues, and I forgive him because I'm an adult now and we all go through shit and I understand it. I'm so happy that he was good to people. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like he wasn't cutthroat. He had good character, despite...
You felt he was cutthroat until you saw that memorial.
I didn't think he was cutthroat, but I would have never thought that they would come and say that kind of stuff. Because I already thought it was this isolated, I'm sleeping on the sidewalk by myself and I don't have anybody. Yeah. That was what was in my brain. So, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like being homeless actually isn't that bad.
Hey,
I saw homeless couples.
I thought the same thing.
Yo, no, for real. No, for real. Like, we laughing about it, but at the same time, I got 2 situations where I really question, like, what am I really working for?
Bruh.
Because I saw a couple, they were sleeping and having sex on cardboard, and I'm like, here I am, can't get a swipe right.
Bruh.
Or I don't like what's swiping right on me.
And I had to process that situation very quickly because it was a short span of not talking to him and then finding that out. And I will never forget the week before I went to go see him, it was WizKid was coming to town. You know who WizKid is? He's an African singer. And I was going to the concert and my mom calls me and she was like, your dad's not doing good. I don't think he's gonna make it. Okay. By the time we get there. And so for about 5 minutes I got super emotional and I was crying. Then I took a deep breath and I'm like, I'm going to follow my dad's footsteps and continue to live my life and worry about this later.
Yeah. So, compartmentalized. Yeah. I already paid for my tickets.
I have never used that word so much until the last 3 months because that's exactly what I had to do. But I feel like it could not have happened in a better time in my life because I would not have been able to have the tools to do that even a year ago. Like it happened right when it should.
Right on time.
Because I did not fall into a depression. I did not spiral. I had.
Do you think a lot of the times you will fall into that spiral, that depression, because you didn't have the means to cope, but you had a problem that you knew you had to deal with?
Yes, I did not. Immediately when it happened, I had a therapist I could call. I talked to my therapist before I even called my dad, so I was able to process and I knew to pause. To not be reactive, to not say, okay, just because she's calling me, I haven't talked to him in 10 years. I don't have to call him today. Like, that's what I told myself. I don't have to call him today. So I was able to take that time to really process and reflect and really get my feelings and not not avoid.
Yeah.
I felt every feeling. I did not distract myself by going out or drinking or smoking weed. Like, I felt every emotion. And I would not have been able to do that before. Yeah.
That's
so,
good.
yeah.
What was the other situation with the homeless? Oh, I saw a guy at a Waffle House, and I told a joking story about this, but he's living out his truck, and he had this weird contraption in which he was taking a shower out the back of his truck, and I was like, that is low key genius, but at the same time, he's talking to himself as like he's talking to the soap in his hair, and when it's all said and done, he's taking a shower in the Waffle House parking lot. It's like, that's crazy within itself, but at the same time, it's low
innovative.
Key, right? It's low key genius, and at the same time, it's like when you think about all the bills a person has to deal with, like, you know, bills, rent, mortgage, all the insurances and stuff like that. He has car insurance if his car's paid off and all that stuff like that. Like, he's living his best life and he can pick up and go whenever he wants to. Yeah. That's like people, the tiny house people, container home people, or people that live in RVs and just like pick up and go. Like, we have this set, like, these benchmarks that we have in society of like, you're not living unless you're doing X, Y, Z. And that's where I think where we all got into the point of like, oh, we're looking at the homeless people in their situations differently because we've lived in this bubble for so long.
It's definitely a bubble. It's definitely a bubble.
And yeah, it makes you think about like that, specifically the idea of like, I gotta have this car, I gotta have this house, I gotta, you know,
it makes you think about what you value.
Yeah. But also, if you were the only person on the planet, would you still be like, I gotta have this mansion, I gotta have this nice car, or would you go for comfort over like style? You know, like, would you just be like, you know what, I just like, I don't care what other people's opinion is, I just want a tiny home. You know, like, I just want, you know, my own thing. Like it's interesting how when you look at I mean, like, these stories that we tell ourselves, essentially, you know, like, about, like, oh, I got to do this because why do you have to do that? Oh, because I got to do it. Like, you can't, like, there's no real reason driving it. It's just because we tell ourselves that, like, we got to reach, like, a certain goal, you know?
Go ahead.
I recently had a huge debate on Facebook about people making a certain income. And so they basically were like, oh, you can't live on $100K in this society. And I'm like, what are y'all doing?
It comes back to what you're trying to do.
I swear to you, I'm just as happy now with my income as when I was making $20K. Now, I couldn't do what I do now, that I was like traveling and doing all of that, but I was happy. I just adjusted. I had a roommate. I still spent time with friends. I've always done what it is that I love to do. And so I just couldn't relate. So somebody commented and said, well, you had a roommate and you couldn't travel. That doesn't sound like happiness to me. And I'm just like, y'all, that's what...
You just shifted your happiness.
Yeah.
It's always into...
well, do you think happy people always find a way to be happy?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I do. I think that you always find a silver lining, or you always hold on to hope. I was watching this YouTube video with this guy he was homeless and he got shot in the face. So like half of his face was like gone. And the way he just talked about what happiness was to him was astonishing to me. Because here this man is, half his face is gone and he's homeless, but he's still finding a way, despite his circumstances, to be grateful for life. And that's really interesting to me because sometimes, not to be morbid, but you look at a situation like that and like, bro, if that was me, I'm out of here. Like, that's just not worth living. But what is the meaning to life for those type of people who have nothing? Like, that's just so intriguing to me. And I think that we can learn from those people in our everyday bustle of life. I think we can learn a very valuable message of what it means to really live and find happiness.
Well, for me, I had that experience firsthand with my brother. My brother is disabled, mentally disabled, and he basically has the body of an old man inside the body of a preteen, right? Now his body is breaking down more and more. But with him, I noticed that he always had he naturally gravitate towards children and older people because those are the people that he can be the most of assistance to. And at the end of the day, he just wanted to be helpful. And I think at the root of most people, we take away materialism. That's what most of us just want to be. We want to be of use in some form of fashion. And like even going back to your father, like I want to have good news. I didn't want to be a burden. And going back to what you said about the spike in suicide, when men, I'm speaking of men because I am one, but our worth is based on how useful we are. And we deem ourselves inadequate as a provider, as a father, or as a community member. We question our ability or our usefulness to be here.
Yes. Yeah, it's interesting talking about some of those gender roles with my male friends, because even with my ex-husband,
how long were you married again?
We were together 7.5, but married for 3.5 of those years.
Quick question: what changed between your dating and marriage life? What
changed?
Yeah.
A
Besides
lot.
The title.
What changed for me personally?
I guess your for you personally, and then your perception of him.
Oh, he's like one of my best friends.
You said that, yeah. You said as best friends.
Yeah, my perception. Okay, now I can answer the question. My perception of him changed because I realized I have trauma. I have stuff that I have to work through, and so do other people. It's not always personal.
I don't mean like the relationship going down. I mean like how you identified or how you looked at him, or how maybe you behaved as a girlfriend versus becoming a wife.
How I behaved as a girlfriend versus becoming a wife.
Yes.
I mean, that's hard for me to answer. Are you talking about like my role? The things that I did?
How did you internalize it? Did you say my role changed, or did you say, okay, I can look at things in a different way because I'm now a wife, because that's more of a long-term agreement versus this can be, well, obviously we know a marriage can dissolve just as fast as a dating situation, but there's something that's supposed to be a little bit more concrete in a construct of a marriage.
It's hard for me to answer that because I'm not the same person, and I definitely did not understand what being a wife was and what it would take and to have a marriage. So I did not understand that at all. Now at 34, I definitely understand it, and I was not ready for that shit by any means back then. Not even a little bit.
What were you lacking?
A mental stability. No, for real though. But I back then I didn't know it then. Codependent, anxious attachment issues, issues with my parents that I had no idea were issues. It was a lot of shit where I look back now, healthy self, and I look back then and I'm like, I was crazy as hell. He didn't help the situation, but I definitely was crazy. How did it manifest
itself in a relationship?
Passive aggressiveness. Okay. Emotional manipulation.
This one time you wore your bra and your panties and they didn't match. That was a real deal, bro.
Yeah, I'm like, and I kept it hairy, so that means the shop is closed, brother. You, bro. Definitely reactivity. Not being understanding, not communicating in an effective way, but it was never malicious. It was always, I needed something and I did not know how to ask for it. So I acted out.
And you didn't necessarily know what you needed either.
No, couldn't even, I had no idea that in certain situations I needed reassurance.
Oh, okay.
I needed to know that you weren't going to leave. I needed to know that you chose me. Now I can vocalize that in my dating situations if I need to. Yeah. But no, that wasn't even a fucking, reassurance was not even a word in my vocabulary back then.
Okay.
All I knew was you're not doing what I need you to do, and I don't even know how to say what I need you to do, but you need to figure out what I need you to do.
The hand movements in the shoulder made my blood pressure go up, and I just
right. It's triggering, right?
Yeah, PTSD.
All right, let's shift to you. What was your longest relationship, and what was his name?
Her name.
Look, when you said that, I was like,
right. I
was like, oh, you're gay. Right. I thought that was a joke.
Well, it's about time I brought this up.
Came out the closet.
Yeah. Well, I don't have that much experience with relationships, really.
Good for you.
Well, not really good for me because
It's good and bad. I would say.
Yeah.
Well, good and bad,
You
but
have
the
positive ones or not.
yeah, but like the thing is, a lot of times, with like people, the things that we are most insecure about, or the things that we're most worried about, tend to be things that we didn't have in the past.
Right. Yes.
Like if you like had a bad relationship with your parents when you were a kid, you like focused on that as an adult. Yeah. And so I didn't get any attention from the opposite sex when I was like a kid and a teenager. So now that
impacts.
It really I think back on like my life and even like to the very recent basically the present, a lot of how I kind of define my state of like where I am in my life is like determined by whether or not I'm in a relationship, whether or not I'm this or that.
I can relate.
Yeah, and so I mean I'm like working on that,
Yeah.
but like it's
You like the idea of a relationship or no?
I love the idea of a relationship. I think love is the most beautiful thing there is in the world, and
if people really understood the meaning of it, and truly accepted it. Like I love my ex-husband more now as friends than I could ever love him as a wife, and he has a girlfriend, and I'm happy for them. Yeah. Like genuinely happy. I'm so glad he found a woman that loves and appreciates him, that they can have a healthy relationship. It's no way I could have said that 7 years ago when we first broke up.
You told me that. Yeah.
So,
I mean, but honestly, you need that distance between a person to make peace with yourself, and then also what you tried to build with him and also failed. And then you have, if it was a really healthy foundation, I guess, to begin with, you can circle back to the friendship.
It was.
And
your personal breakthrough would led for you to create a new foundation for the friendship, right?
I feel like in the last 2 years of our marriage, it was a lack of intimacy, but we still went out on dates. So it wasn't like we hated each other. So I think in that time frame, we were building a friendship because we were living together. We were playing video games. It wasn't beef. We just wasn't like romantically involved. And then,
that's when you stopped shaving?
Probably. So I think that it was unique in that way, because a lot of times couples break up and it's very volatile, but they're still, being intimate. They're still having sex. It's still like that. It was almost like
that always goes well.
Gradually died out.
Breakup sex?
Yeah, breakup sex is always a good idea.
Have you guys had
never
sex?
Backfires? Huh?
Yeah.
How would you rate it on as far as? Okay, well, I guess we get to have different types of sex now. There's the passionate sex, the honeymoon phase sex, and then there's the breakup sex, and it's like everything.
Let's talk about the mundane sex. The sex
that's
where
what
you've been with
in
a motherfucker for a while.
Right. Where you get from like, oh, I like this new thing, and
where
then
you
it's right before it's over.
The sex. I don't know if you've been there.
Where it's on
but that's the thing. That is a thing.
Well, I had an ex that did that. She tried to do that, and I was like, no.
I have a friend who's a comic in North Carolina. I don't even know if he does comedy anymore, but he had this joke about like when like him and his wife got married, the biggest thing that changed was like now when we have sex, it's a conversation. We have to have. Like he would say like he was like, yeah, one day we were like watching TV and she just turns to me and was like, do you want me to suck your dick? And I was like, that's a stupid question.
Right, of course.
Of course. Could be at my granddaddy's funeral. Like, this one's for you, granddad.
I actually
shout out Brian Deans.
That's
my boy.
What about the mundane sex or sex schedule for you? If you schedule it,
the kind of sex where you do that before the sex, like
no fact.
All right.
Is that before, during, and after?
I pray in my next relationship it never gets to that point.
Okay, so have you identified like what possibly led to the scheduling of the sex?
So we didn't necessarily schedule sex because we don't have kids, so it wasn't that. But I think I've heard other women talk about it. Yeah, and
it's like written up on the refrigerator.
No, for real, like alarm in the phone. Today is sex. I mean, for some people, I'm assuming.
You don't want to have an alarm. Like, that'll become Pavlovian if you have an alarm go off and you're there. Ooh, that's a bad experiment.
No, I could...
Actually, if I ever get married, I'm going to do that so that then, like, I'll just have, like, all right, I'm going to have... Every time Hooked on a Feeling by Blue Swede plays, we're going to have sex, and then eventually... I'm just going to be playing it on the radio and she's going to want to have sex. I'm going to have to write that down. That's a very good idea.
I like the way you think.
That's great.
See,
But that will only work if the sex is good,
I love tricking
though.
people into sex. That's a really great idea to have,
You
especially for a successful man.
Well, at least you're doing it with music and not Percocets.
Oh, yeah.
So, there we go.
Yeah. I would like
Or you
to
can do a
say on a
feature.
serious note, I'm not into
the perks.
that. I don't...
So, with the scheduling part right there, it's not like I would probably schedule it with a partner. I think I would remind myself because of the scheduling, because most of my dating history has been women with children. Mm-hmm. And when you get into I don't know, man, if you've ever been around kids would drain you of all your energy.
Bruh. I recently made up my mind, I'm straight on kids.
Really?
Yeah.
What was the deciding factor?
When I'm sitting in my 3-bedroom house and it's peaceful and quiet and I can meditate, I can smoke, I can watch what I want, it's just so peaceful, and I know kids are gonna ruin that, and I just don't want to give that up.
It's funny you say that because I said something similar, and then I remember thinking, well, I guess what you and I would perceive as peace, because I'm basically what you just described as me. What I perceived as peace, and I was like, hey, you want to return to that, a place with no kids? And I was dating a girl that had like three kids, right? And she was like, it's too quiet here. And it blew my mind because what they find peaceful is chaos to us, and vice versa.
Yo, there's a really old parable or something like this. It's an old like Jewish story that like
clearly in a room full of Jews.
Yeah, well, of course. Well, there's like always like have you ever seen A Serious Man?
No.
Well, that's this. It's a very Jewish movie, but they kind of there's like a lot of stories of like people going to a rabbi and asking for advice, and it's always this convoluted thing that leads to whatever lesson. Okay. But there was this story I remember hearing when I was a kid at synagogue, and it actually did it stood out to me, and like I still think about it, where like it was a man that like had children, and he had a wife, and he was just tired. His house was loud, and he like couldn't get a moment of silence, and it was like too much for him. And so he went to the rabbi and said, what do I do? Like my house is too chaotic, I don't know what to do. And then the rabbi said, all right, do you have a cow? And this was like back in like the 1800s or some shit. And he was like, do you have a cow? And he was like, yeah. He was like, take the cow, bring it into the house. And he was like, what would that have to? Just do it. And so he did it. He brought the cow into the house, and now it's louder. It's worse. And so then he like goes to the rabbi. He's like, what do I do like now? Like it's not getting any better. He's like, do you have a goat? And he's like, it's the 1800s and I'm a Jew. Of course I have a goat. And that like so then like
so
he says like
so
take the goat and put it in the house. And then like eventually he's losing his mind, and he's like, I don't know, like I'm losing my mind. This is way too much. He's like, okay, what I want you to do now is take the goat and the cow and the horse. I assume there was a horse at some point. Yeah. And take all of them and just like put them back outside. And now it's just back to him and his family. And relative to how it was when he had the cow and the goat and his mother and everything, now peaceful. It seems peaceful. Yeah. Because
but he's put him back in his natural state.
It's perspective. Yeah.
Joseph got the vibe. Money on my mind. I be on my own time. I will with a dime. I can't give you no time.